Okay, welcome back everyone. I want to walk through a view of the future that Marques Brownlee has depicted and actually done some testing on and come to some really interesting conclusions. What I'm talking about here is solar energy. I want to walk through this as plainly and simply as possible because I think it's really important that everyone understands it. And the opportunity is two-pronged. One is the immense savings that are possible, and not only savings, but revenue, direct revenue. And then the other is the investment opportunity, which I think is just unbelievable right now. So first, addressing the savings side of the equation. The economics of solar have changed so dramatically over the last few years and are going to continue to do so. Once you understand the value of the cost reduction you obtain from this, it's hard to understand why more people aren't adopting solar. This reminds me a little bit of how Warren Buffett says you should buy a house or a home before you start investing your money in the stock market. And the reason he says that is that a house is essentially a guaranteed investment that you're going to be forced to pay down over time, and then inflation is going to benefit you because the value of your house is going to appreciate and the debt is going to depreciate. And so if you think of the present value of all those cost savings, it's essentially money that you don't have to earn in the future, and therefore you have more free cash flow to invest in other things. So to me, it feels similar. And then on the flip side, solar stocks and solar-related technology stocks are so decimated that there's an incredible opportunity to ride the wave of solar that is coming. And the reason that it's inevitable is that the economics are so obvious, right? I didn't appreciate this myself, but now that I appreciate it, I don't know why I wouldn't do solar. And I think a lot of people are going to start to realize this, and it's going to become sort of an obvious next step for a lot of people, especially given the way electricity prices have been going. And I think we're all aware of, Europe's crisis a couple years ago and how electricity prices just went through the roof. You'd be completely insulated from all that. And not only that, if you have a battery system associated with your solar, you could actually sell back to the grid and make money. I mean, that's not even part of what I want to focus on here. There's just some really interesting opportunities that are starting to develop, especially as batteries get cheaper too.
And I have not paid for electricity in a year. I have a bunch of electrical appliances, computers, game console, TVs, air conditioning, and I drive an electric car to and from work every single day and charge at home. $0 bills.
So Marques did this in a way that I personally wouldn't recommend. He went all out, spent about $120,000 on the solar tiles, did his whole roof, power walls, I think 3 of them stacked in his garage, and then professional labor to install the whole thing. He got tax credits, so that brought it from 120 down to 93,000 after tax credits. And he would have actually got that lower in today's world because there are more tax credits available. So let's call it about 85,000 is what he would have got it for today. Still, that's expensive. But let's work off his 93. And so going through everything he spent and then his payback period, it ended up being about 9.5 years payback period at his spend. Now, what that doesn't take into account is inflation, because every year power prices are going up and up and up and up. So this year he's saving 10,000, but next year he might be saving 11,000, and the year after that maybe 12,000, and so on and so forth. So his payback period, as calculated, might actually be a little bit shorter than what he's stated, which is interesting. The 9.5-year payback period is actually mind-blowing given how much he spent. I'm surprised that it is that low. He saves about $10,000 a year of electricity costs, in part because he charges his electric vehicle off of his house's power. So he has a $0 gas or electric charging cost because, he doesn't pay for that. And so, his house is powering everything free of cost. Now, a lot of places have net zero metering, which is a great cheat because you don't have to fork out, for big expensive batteries like the Powerwall. But one of the most interesting things that's happened recently is that Tesla has announced that its cars will allow bi-directional charging, meaning your Tesla can actually act as your house's battery, which saves you spending a ton of money on an expensive battery. You use your car as the battery, when at home, of course. But, on a stormy night when your power goes out or, would have gone out, because in this case you have a car hooked up as your battery, your power doesn't go out. Or it could act as a battery to allow you to sell a ton of power to the grid. So when you're at home and your car is plugged in, acting as your battery, let's say it's the evening, there's no more sun powering your solar roof and whatnot, but your car's fully charged. So you could deplete, let's say, 70% of your car's battery when power prices are through the roof at peak pricing during the day. And then, maybe you live with the 30% left for tomorrow's drive, or maybe you pay a little bit of money in the middle of the night when prices are way back down, and you charge your car back up during the night. So your car is essentially an energy trader, far better than you or I could be. Certainly not without spending the night, awake trading energy. So it's pretty interesting. So the other crazy thing about this sort of system is that, say you went with an N-phase system, which is a stock I own, so again, conflict of interest here, but let's just say you went with an N-phase system. Well, the microinverters, I believe, have a 25-year warranty, right? 25 years. So if your payback period's 9, I mean, you've got a ton of free years beyond that are guaranteed to be providing you free energy at, let's call it 10K a year, or probably more as energy prices increase. And so, you've got 25 years on your inverters. Theoretically, you can install the system yourself with their setup. They're little microinverters that just go on the back of the panels. There's no giant, scary inverter. And the solar panels themselves, in some cases, last a lifetime. And warranties can be 25 years as well on those. So after your payback period, which we'll get to shortly, you're more or less guaranteed to have a working system until the end of 25 years. And heck, it may even keep going for another decade or two, if you get lucky. So let's run through some numbers quickly. Okay, so next time I want to get into the investment opportunity side of this, because some of those stocks are just dirt cheap and they have an unreal industry tailwind, as you can see right here. So on the cost saving side of things, there's a few things to note. First, earnings, right? When you pay 10K for your utility bill, that's 10K net, right? You have to earn, let's say, $14,000 a year in order to pay a $10,000 utility bill because you're taxed on your gross earnings. So keep that in mind, right? It's not, the payback period shouldn't really be based on 10. It actually should be based on more like 14 because that's what you need to earn in order to pay the 10. So anyway, second, as I already mentioned, inflation is a huge factor. If the numbers make sense today, they're going to look even better in a decade from now when your system has been operating for that period, in all likelihood is already paid off, and it's just savings at that point. And your utility bills would be far larger than they would be today. So second, as I mentioned already, inflation is a huge factor. If the numbers make sense today, then they're going to look even better in a decade because the cost that you would have been paying will be far larger. Inflation plus really the rate that energy seems to inflate at, which is not just 2% as the Fed likes to think. And then, in all likelihood, your system would have been long paid off and it's pure savings at that point. So at the low end, you could DIY something without the batteries because you use your car as the battery for about 10K potentially, 10,000. So in that case, conceivably, your payback period could be a year or say a year and a half, and then you have free energy for at least the next 25 years. Now, if you're not that handy, no problem. You can still probably get a system put in for $20,000 to $30,000, paying someone to do the labor and using Enphase hardware or Solar Edge hardware, for example. So now you're looking at like a 3 to 4 year payback period, and then you're in the free and clear for the next 21 years or so that your system is warrantied. And again, remember the tax piece, right? Because gross income needed to pay a $10,000 utility bill is not $10,000. So if you happen to have a Tesla or potentially another EV, if it's able to do the bi-directional down the road, then you may be able to profit from having your car in the garage on top of that. So I've heard, estimates of a few $100s a month from this sort of opportunistic selling through Tesla's auto bidder, for example. So call it even, $3,000 of revenue that you get out of the system as well a year. So then, you factor that in as well, and that's what, $3,500 of revenue a year over 25 years that you get off the system as well, potentially. And the 10K of savings that we talked about, maybe that's high for you right now, but regardless, our world is getting more and more energy hungry. You think about, phone batteries are going to get denser and more powerful. And then you've got like augmented reality batteries that need to be charged, and they're going to be more and more a part of our life. And then you've got, of course, your car, and your car is just going to get more and more energy intensive as ranges get bigger and bigger and batteries get better and better. So maybe you're not using $10,000 of electricity a year right now. But then again, maybe you're driving an ICE vehicle and you're paying for gas. So, you have to factor in that cost. If you scrap that, you go straight to electric. And then, maybe you're heating your house in the future by electricity rather than a fossil fuel today, for example. So point being, the electricity spend is going to keep going up, both in quantity and likely price. I mean, price has certainly had a very long trend of increasing. and almost accelerating that increase in recent years. So everything is working in your favor once you make that leap to sort of go self-sufficient, and then you get the benefits too of, in a disaster, for example, say there's an earthquake and the power grid goes down. Well, your power grid might not have gone down because you're, at the very least, you've got a giant power pack in your garage, or you've got a car that potentially can feed some power back into the system. So there's just endless ways you can save here. It's really incredible. And not to mention, by paying your utility company, you aren't just paying for the infrastructure and the power source feedstock. In my case, my utility company that I pay has something like 10,000 employees and a highly paid management team. So personally, I'd rather pay myself to be my house's CEO, Chief Energy Officer. Okay, corny, I know, but anyway, you get the point. It's really becoming a no-brainer, and we have so little adoption relatively in North America right now that, and on that point, actually, I think it's about 5% in North America are using solar panels, and in an integrated system like I'm talking about. Whereas I think in parts of Europe, we're up to like 40% already, which is incredible. Yeah, and this is Northern Europe too, right? Not even Spain. So there's a huge amount of runway for the companies in this space, and just for people to sort of learn more about the economics and the reasons to do this. And if Northern Europe can find a reason to do this, I'm pretty sure that Texas can. So anyway, you get the point. It's really becoming a no-brainer. And then we have so little adoption that the companies that are positioning themselves to be leaders in this space, in solar and battery, they're in such an incredible position at the moment, with massive energy or sector tailwinds behind them. As I pointed out, I mean, see this article, right? Like, the industry is expected to grow 15-fold by 2030. 15-fold. And for that reason, I'm heavily invested in the coming energy revolution, and specifically those selling the picks and shovels needed to build out all this infrastructure. So next time I'll dig into some of the incredible opportunities I see on the investment side, which absolutely could be life-changing for people who are invested early. And frankly, I think that the saving side of the equation that we just discussed could be equally as life-changing for people as well. I mean, having an extra 10 or 15K of extra cash flow a year is huge from a saving and investment point of view. I mean, what could you do with that? So please like and subscribe, and when you subscribe, you'll hopefully see the next episode that comes out. And I'm going to dig into the companies that I think are best positioned to take advantage of this energy revolution and become some of the leaders and probably the next, hot stocks of the next cycle, right? Because they'll be growth companies in the truest sense. And they could be, from here, I would say 5 to 10x opportunities in many cases. So I think there's a huge opportunity on that side. I'll dig into that next time. So we'll see you there. Thanks again.